Welcome to Retro Adventures. My name's Paul, and I'm in historic St. Charles, Missouri today, looking at some of the Lewis and Clark sites. My hope is in the next few weeks to travel alongside the Missouri River up to North Dakota, going to some of these Lewis and Clark sites. This is a town that I know pretty well because I work down here part-time, but let's look at some of the sites and statues and other things that you can find here in St. Charles that denote the William and Clark expedition of 1804 through 1806. Here you see the famous Lewis and Clark statue, along with Meriwether Lewis's dog Seaman. And you'll see this statue several places, but this one is in Frontier Park in St. Charles. Right below will tell you a little bit of information about this statue and commemorating St. Charles' involvement in the Corps of Discovery. And you can see that this monument was dedicated on May the 18th, 2003, just 1 year before the bicentennial of the route that Lewis and Clark took. Now this marker commemorates the campsite where Lewis and Clark and the men camped from May the 16th through the 20th, and then they stayed here one night on their way back. Now in reality, this is not the actual place that they stayed, because at that time the river would have been running right over this ground. The river went all the way up to past this street that you see here today, almost next to the houses and buildings that you see. Now, an interesting fact about the men who stayed here: William Clark was here all of those nights. However, Meriwether Lewis only camped out the last night. The reason being that Lewis was back in St. Louis making arrangements for some Osage chiefs to travel to Washington, D.C. to meet the president, President Jefferson at the time. And here we have another monument commemorating the Corps of Discovery. This one was erected by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Has some quotes here from Thomas Jefferson and also from the William and Clark Journal. And here we have the other side of that monument, which lists members of the permanent party. Interestingly enough, though, it does have on here Sacagawea and her child, Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, also Toussaint Charbonneau, who actually never came back to St. Charles from up north in what is now North Dakota. Now it also lists two of the members who joined here in St. Charles, Pierre Crousset and Francois Labiche. Interesting story about Crousset was he was practically blind, and he was chosen because he was a good navigator of the Missouri River, and believe it or not, he was also a good hunter. Well, that was until it had a little accident when he accidentally shot Meriwether Lewis in the backside. If you're looking for that monument that I just showed you, you simply have to locate the Daniel Boone statue that is here on historic Main Street, and that monument is just a little bit behind it. It's kind of hidden, so it is rather difficult to find sometimes. This historic Main Street is busy most of the time. It's a great place to visit while you're looking at your Lewis and Clark information. Now, if you really want to experience a hidden gem here in St. Charles, Missouri, this house is where the Lewis and Clark party had, in fact, a party hosted by then Commandant of St. Charles. It was in the lower level in the basement, and it was an all-night party with food and drink and dancing. And today this is the Guest House Company, a series of places like bed and breakfast places that you can actually stay in overnight. So if you're a real Lewis and Clark enthusiast, you can stay where Lewis and Clark and his party had a party. And here we have the plaque that tells you who owned this house when Lewis and Clark stopped here on their journey. Don Carlos Tejon. Now he was the second commandant here in St. Charles, and after it was, of course, bought by the United States, the Louisiana Purchase, he still was a prominent citizen here. But once again, you can stay at this house. If this is fully booked, then right next door, there's another place that you can stay, and you can say you stayed either in or close to where Lewis and Clark had their party. Now, some people want to say that that party took place the night before the Corps of Discovery took off from St. Charles, and that's one reason that they started so late, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, most researchers say that is not true. In fact, the party was on the first night that they were here, which would have meant that Meriwether Lewis wouldn't have even been at the party. He was in St. Louis taking care of business. And the last thing I'll show you today is the Lewis and Clark Boathouse and Museum. It's right down on the Missouri River. It's a great museum. If you have a chance to come here to St. Charles, definitely go in there, and you can spend a couple of hours, especially if you really like Lewis and Clark history. I'm not going to take you in there today. I've been several times, but again, if you have a chance, make sure you go there. Now, this museum was also dedicated on May 18th, 2003, exactly 1 year before the bicentennial. Now, if you came down before that time, you might have said, hey, there was a museum on Main Street, and there was. Right now, the Bike Stop Cafe is in that very building. Another thing you might notice if you come here to St. Charles are several of these statues. This, of course, is Lewis's dog, Seaman, who was the mascot, so to speak. In 2019, when St. Charles, Missouri celebrated its sesquicentennial. That's 250 years of existence. They had 25 of these statues all around town, and at that time you could do a scavenger hunt and find all 25 of them. Like I said, I'm not going inside today, but I will show you on the lower level, they do have 3 replica boats, the 2 pirogues and the keel boat. And it is a exact replica of the keel boat, 55 foot long. Here we go. And it is seaworthy. It's actually been in a number of documentaries and also some movies depicting the Lewis and Clark journey. And there it is, the star of it all, the Missouri River. Again, I hope to be traveling alongside the Missouri River all the way to North Dakota, and I invite you to come along on that journey. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and watch for some more of my retro adventures.